Here to present data and insights into how Canadians spend their free time is Tim Middleton, a project manager and retail liaison at BookNet Canada. With a passion for startup culture, entrepreneurial enterprises, and disruptive technology ignited by a varied career in retail and consumer research, all things bookish remain his first and true love. Tim Middleton.
Today I'm going to start off with something we can all agree on, some basic Wittgenstein-like fact, like time is money, and maybe one more fact, technology has advanced. So a lot of promises were made to my generation about technology in the future. When I was a kid, we had big plans. Even very smart men like Nobel laureate polymath Herbert Simon, in other words, a really smart guy, thought we were only 20 years away from a world in which machines could do any work a man can do, which may have led our generation to thinking jetpacks, flying cars, and robot maids were in our future. One thing for certain is that these predictions made us start to think about what we would do with all of that leisure time. Well, forecasting, as you know, forecasting what trends will happen in the future is not an easy thing to do. We aren't always very good at knowing what is going to change. Even given a time frame of less than, say, 20 years ago, not many would have predicted that tablets, smartphones, and e-readers would become reading platforms. Probably nobody would have predicted that. A big question for those of us in our industry is, will people still read for leisure in the future? Will Amazon still be an online bookstore? Or, on our trip to Mars, will we be allowed to turn on our electronic devices? And will we have to buy that from Amazon? Can we really do any better with this question about the future of reading as a leisure activity than a monkey throwing darts? Bill Gates thinks so. You can achieve incredible progress if you set a clear goal and find a measure, which brings us naturally to the BookNet Canada's attempts to do that with our leisure time survey. We've been conducting surveys to find out how the average Canadian spends their free time, including how often they read, what devices and formats they prefer, how often they read book reviews, and more. This helps us understand if readers and book buyers are changing their habits. We know that we have an industry that is facing some interesting upheavals, but why? Is it because readers and book buyers are changing their habits? Maybe as a result of technological change or something else. Readers change habits, and ultimately what really matters is what the buyer-reader demands of publishing. The platform we use for the survey, Noah talked about, has over 25 million global panelists at their beck and call, making for an incredibly robust tool. Their panel is tagged with thousands of attributes, so you can get into very fine-grained detail on your customer, the reader. I'm going to take you through some of the results of our latest survey, completed at the end of February, and show year-on-year comparisons with results from the surveys we ran in 2014 and 2015. And a warning up front, there will be graphs. Lots of graphs. We first asked some general questions, letting the panelists tell us what their top 2 choices are for how they spend their leisure time. The results show this year that people are spending most of their time on the internet. And interestingly, in the 50s, one of the top choices for leisure activity was staring out the window. So the internet, I suppose, is a window on the world. There's reading in a very respectable 4th place, with 22.5% of people choosing reading as one of their top 2 leisure activities. In 2015, movies gave reading a run for its money, and I believe it was likely society preparing for their Mars trip. And after the effects of that is people wanted to spend more time with their family when they realized how long a Mars trip would be. Okay, our survey doesn't really tell us why people choose to spend time with their family, but it does make you wonder what 34.1% of people mean by spending time with their families. We also allow people to enter open-ended comments and tell us what they do with their time. So I was surprised to see no drinking as a leisure activity, but then of course there's quite a bit of fishing going on, and since they didn't consider it a sport, it must be something else. So on to more graphs. This is the data segmented by gender, looking by those who selected reading as one of their top leisure activities, one of their top 2 leisure activities. Of all people who selected reading as one of their top leisure activities, 73% were women and 27% were men. showing women are the clear winners when reading for leisure is the question. When we start to segment by gender and age, we see within each segment that 31% of women aged 18 to 34 chose reading, while 21% of men aged 18 to 34 selected reading. Women ages 35 to 54, 40%, 55 plus, 29%. 39% of men aged 35 to 54 chose reading, and 41% of men aged 55 plus chose reading. Clearly, women are the heavier leisure time readers of the 21.6% of people who chose reading as one of their top 2 leisure activities. Men, well, they like reading too, I suppose. So looking at the year-on-year for the question, did you read a book in the last year? There's a slight change from last year, but mostly within the margin of error, so nothing to really fret about. It's pretty flat. Now we start to look at some bookish type behavior. Those who answered yes to having read a book in the past year are branched to answer further questions. So this is what 2016 looks like so far. It will come as no surprise that a majority visit a social network like Facebook, but it is also informative that 70% say they never or rarely participate in book clubs or reading groups. So we can look at year-over-year data to see the story about book clubs, a 6% increase in Canadian readers telling us they rarely or never participate in book clubs. Visiting social networks daily has seen a drop of 8%, which maybe could explain the 13% increase in those who rarely or never talk about books online. But why are they talking to their friends less about the books they read? And does this 5% increase in those who rarely shop online for books conjure visions of brick-and-mortar retail renaissance? I don't know those answers yet, but those questions give me and BookNet ammunition for another survey to dig a little deeper into some of these results. Next, we wanted to know what formats readers are reading in, or maybe formats is misleading, platforms, let's say. So print, audio, or ebook. So we asked, did you read a print book in the last year? And there was a slight drop of 2% over last year. So not a significant difference. Did you read an ebook in the last year? 4% down from last year and 7% down from 2014. Is this telling us about the flattening of the ebook market? Audio took a 2% dip, so again, not really significant. Once we figure out what people are reading, regarding what people are reading, we like to ask where they're getting their reading material. So where did you acquire it? So the good news for everyone who reads at least one print book, bricks and mortar bookstore is still the clear winner, even a tad higher, 0.1% than last year. Comes as no surprise that ebooks are generally acquired online, but there is a bump in library users for ebooks and subscription service. Is this cannibalization from online retailer? And audio as well, a little bump in both subscription and library. So in my experience, Canadians are interested in regionalism, so I looked at the top 3 selections for print book in those regions. I see a compelling story in the fact that number 2 and 3 top choices for Atlantic Canada are someone gave them the book and they got it from a non-traditional book retailer. I don't know why I find that compelling, it just is, it stands out. We didn't include territories in this, or I didn't include territories in this. We didn't have enough data for that. So we asked panelists to tell us how much reading they did this year. And 45.9% of the people said it stayed the same. 33.4% said it increased. So that's good news, opportunity. We asked about library usage. And here we see there's a 16% drop in readers checking a book out of the library. Among ebook readers, there was a 7% drop in those who said they had checked out an ebook from the library. I I should mention Jordan Martinez, who is our intern. So all the graphs that are actually pretty good looking in here are thanks to her. And all the graphs that look like this are mine. I just wanted to give her a shout out. I want to change gears a bit now, and I realize you don't know that much about me, which isn't so great for a speed dating session like this, so I'm between the age of 45 and 54, just barely. I'm married, I have 2 children, I live in Ontario. My top 2 leisure activities are reading and watching TV. I watch TV several times a week. I own a smartphone, a tablet, and a dedicated e-reader. I plan on purchasing a new smartphone this year. I've read a book in the last year. I estimate that I read about 20 books a year. I acquire most of my books from the library. I read daily for about 1 to 3 hours a day. I guess you can do the math to see. I have 5 minutes left, okay. I talk to people about the books I'm reading. I visit social networks daily. I visit book-specific networks about 3 times a month. I rarely discuss books online. I read book reviews. I've read print, audio, digital books. I get print books and audio books mostly from the library. I get ebooks mostly from an online retailer like Kobo. I tend to use my smartphone when I read ebooks, which I do about 1 to 3 times a month. I think my reading has stayed about the same this year as last. Do you feel like you know me better? I'm curious what you plan to do with me. Maybe you want to ask me more questions about the genre of books I read, why I use the library instead of buying books. Maybe you think I'm part of the small house movement. Or maybe you're saying, yeah, that's you, but who cares about you? You aren't normal, and maybe you're right. But I do fit in pretty well overall with the other dudes. I would have selected reading higher than the 2 top selections of my cohort, and I use the library more and read on my phone more, but otherwise I'm a pretty average guy between the age of 45 and 54. And doing this kind of navel-gazing made me want to look outside of myself, so I looked at the reader we all love, the one who reads every day. So these are the people who tell us they read every day, and who is that average person who reads every day? Our survey tells us that the daily reader, on average, is female, married, average age of 44, has 1 child, has a 2-year degree, and makes between $50,000 and $75,000. The highlights of the daily reader, so this isn't all the data you can take away, but 53% read between 1 to 3 hours a day, 41 get their print books from bookstore, 32 listened to an audiobook in the last year, 41 bought the audiobook at an online retailer, 26 got the audio at the library, 53 read an ebook in the last year, 51 bought the ebook at an online retailer, and 31% got the ebook from the library. I also created a profile for what I called a hybrid reader, someone who reads print and digital, but I didn't limit it by daily reading. So it's interesting to start to see how these profiles can be a little bit different. The top takeaways for the hybrid reader, 32% get the print book from bricks and mortar bookstore, 22 get the print book from the library, 61 get the ebook from an online retailer, 22 from a library, 34 read their ebook on a tablet, 36 never read on their phone, 39 have listened to an audiobook in the last year, 38 get their audio from an online retailer, 24 get the audio from the library, and 34 listen to an audio less than once a month. One more profile that I call the digital reader. So this is someone who did not read a print book last year, but did read ebooks. So they're a pure digital reader, and so 11.2% of the people who did read a book last year did not read a print book last year. 58.5% of those who didn't read a print book read an ebook. 70.7% got the ebook from an online retailer, 12.1% got the ebook for free, 41.4% read their ebook on a tablet, 58.5% never read on their phone, 21.9% read daily, while 31.3% read 1 to 3 times per month. So what that tells me, and certainly I would want to spend more time with the data, is that that is your ebook reader, sort of the comparable your daily reader for the print market, ebook market, something like that. So it's fun to look at this data, but it's also important for our businesses. And to help understand our customer, along with our sales data platform and all of the other research projects that BookNet Canada takes, you can start to use measurable data to help you make better business decisions and prepare for the future. And I'm not just talking about my generation, but all generations. Thank you.